Thank you, Merk. So our next talk will be on the future of decentralized social. Today, social media is an essential part of people's lives, as well as an important part for businesses, creatives, and brands. And as large Web 2 platforms may continue sudden shifts and cause disruption to users, it's more important now than ever to own your own social identity, relationships, and content. So today we'll be hearing from Stani of Aave Companies and Maggie from Shify. So let's welcome them to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is Maggie Love. I'm the founder of Shify, which empowers women and non-binary folks, entrepreneurs, and professionals to succeed in frontier technologies like Web3 and AI. And I'm here with Stani Kulechov, the founder of Aave Companies. We're really excited to be hosting a conversation on the future of decentralized social. Before we get started, how many of you have Lens profiles, are building on Lens, want Lens profiles, are excited about decentralized social? Great. That's good to see. Stani, before we get started, why don't you just give a quick introduction of yourself and what we were building at Lens?
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. Super cool to see some of you having Lens profiles. So, but I'm going to do a little bit of introduction. Obviously, Aave team, we've been building decentralized protocols and infrastructure for a few years now. Mainly know about the Aave protocol, which is a decentralized finance protocol, and the idea of Aave protocol is to bring accessible, borderless finance to everyone. And I think in a longer term idea is that every single person across the world has the same equal financial opportunity and access to yield and the dollar rate as well. More recently, with the past couple of years, we've been building Lens protocol, which is decentralized social networking protocol. So we basically take different kinds of social behavior that we all users are doing on the internet. So basically creating our identities, our online presence, making connections online, and bringing them into Web3. And what I mean by bringing Web3 is that we create ownership for the audiences that we create, the networks we create, and also the identities we create online. So the same way as you might own ETH or Bitcoin, and that's your asset, in your wallet, you also have a profile in your wallet that is basically tied to you and not tied to the exact platform. And obviously, as a company, our goal is to build people-powered internet that benefits all. So we believe that there's a lot of ownership in the internet at this point by the big companies, and we want to make it more balanced, meaning that people have more say and skin in the game, and actually can decide how the future of the internet is built.
I love that, because these social platforms in Web 2, of course, do a great job of aggregating all the users in the community, but the community, the builders, the content creators barely reap the benefits of being on those platforms. There's like a platform creator mismatch. What I like about Lens, and I teach about Lens in Shify, I talk about it helping create the creator-driven economy through ownership, through things like being able to monetize your content and set your own pricing for it. And congratulations on the launch of Lens V2. And I would love to help the audience understand, how does this represent the next chapter in Lens's evolution, building on owning your content, owning your profiles, and what were some of the key milestones that happened in V1 that led to a successful launch of V2?
Yeah, V1 for us was purely experimentation. So we really didn't know what we were building and what people want, and what were the community expectations. So we basically look at existing social media and what everyone's doing there, and looking where we can actually use the blockchain, decentralized storage, and data availability, all these things that you keep hearing on these events, and how we can actually use that for creating some sort of value for the users. And what we realized that one of the best benefits of the blockchain, it creates integrity. So you can trace transactions, you have transparency, and also you can trust. You can create programming that is immutable, for example. So you don't need to trust a platform or a centralized service provider or an application. And with Lens V1, we created these primitives where you can own a profile, create a follow graph on chain. And we realized that actually what we kind of build is a shared social network. So a lot of the builders that are building on Lens, they're actually using Lens protocol to bootstrap their own application and audience to a shared network. And why this is very interesting for us is that in some ways Ethereum is a shared network. So we are all interacting in the same network and a community. And it kind of like reflects that you have a lot of benefits when you open up the APIs of these backends of social networking platforms and make it available to everyone to either compute data, make some interesting algorithms, reward users for certain type of aligned behavior. But in more interestingly, you can actually build a new experience with an existing user base that exists on Lens. And V2 is quite interesting update because we created a vision where we're now actually thinking that what we can take forward for developers and what are the new experiences they can build, and learned a lot during the process by building in public. So there's some interesting features on Lens that you can actually go and look into as well.
Yeah, that's great. And before we dive more into V2, you talked about how V1 really helped build this open social graph. So now SheFi, as a profile on Lens, can see everyone who interacts with SheFi, can see who posts about SheFi, can have all that data way more easily and interact with the SheFi community, which I don't really have on Twitter or Instagram, and those are all closed. So if I wanted to leave Twitter, let's say, and focus on a new platform, I'd have to start all over again. But can you dive a bit more into why it's important to have these open social graphs, and for the users out there, like what they could do with some of this information?
I think you can see a lot of interesting meritocratic behavior, which is fascinating. So one of the things that is very hard to solve on social media, whether it's Web 2 or Web 3, is the user group of bots and spam and unwanted behavior. And that happens everywhere. And what I found more recently is that it's very difficult to actually put a price on something like creating a profile or creating some sort of a verification system where you have to pay, because there's always someone who wants to pay that price.
Yes.
But on-chain data, you can actually see that who participated, for example, in SheFi events that are happening, for example, here in Istanbul and across globally, who are dancing until 4 a.m. at Rave, and and based on that kind of activity, you can actually recognize certain kind of a user behavior and use that as an advantage. And reward those users. And I do think also the monetization plays quite a big role. There is a lot of monetization happening actually in social media. It's just that we don't see it. We only kind of see the ads, and we're consuming with our attention. And what we've been focusing quite a lot with Lens is that we build this shared monetization layer. So, for example, if you create content and you make your content collectible, you can share all that revenue with your audience, or maybe the applications or algorithms that are supporting the discovery of your content and within your community, and in a very transparent way. And I think that's a power that Web3 provides, that you have this set of transparency and integrity and guarantees. So we can, by using the blockchain, we can guarantee that certain amount of fees are going to creators, to curators that are helping with the discovery of the content, and all the builders that are actually building on decentralized infrastructure. And I think those are the incentives to build in the space.
I love that because I'm a big music person and I love discovering new music, and I love sharing it with people because I just enjoy knowing that someone else is feeling the feeling I'm feeling at the moment that we're both hearing the song. But that really happens in DMs, and there's no great way to curate. And I have a lot of followers on Spotify as well for my different playlists, but I can't interact with them at all.
Yeah.
And so that's a really powerful use case for a music creator. Can you talk about any of the examples on Lens of musicians or other creatives who've been using these features to support their curators and share those revenues with them?
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised that one of the bigger audiences on Lens since the beginning has been music creators. And music industry is somehow underserved or underbalanced, I would say, in some ways. So there's a lot of revenue going into the music industry, but basically what actually goes to the pockets of the artists is relatively small number of the bigger pie. And it's really hard to actually measure even because that information isn't transparent and it's based on paper agreements. And also the bigger the application is and the bigger the platform is, the more they actually have leverage over artists. And this is the kind of like a behavior we created from the Web 2. And obviously which Web 2 has been amazing in terms of like building scaled applications and providing user experience to the users. But what we're trying to do with Decentralized Social is to balance more towards the creators and who are actually building the content and should benefit from that. And I think music creators, for example, for Lens, they found a way to monetize. So they create this exciting content on Lens and they're making the content collectible. So what's interesting with NFTs is that you can collect art, but it can be also music, it can be text as well, and collects in Lens protocol is I would like to say it's kind of like a high value signal of support. It's something comparable to, for example, tipping when you want to tip your creators or people who create content, but also get something in return, like a memory or a piece of content. And on Lens, you can share and amplify the content directly and actually earn while you're doing that. So in some ways, the curator part is elevated in the protocol, and it's up to the creator to decide how much they want to share. And there's an open market actually for that discovery.
Yeah, I really like that. It's it takes a whole ecosystem to make somebody into a superstar. So now we can actually feel like other than just tipping or sharing freely, we can own something, even if it's the NFT, and also share that. Have that as a badge in our history and start building like our reputation and identity around how we're interacting with our favorite artists or supporting our favorite artists in a much more transparent way than we have in Web 2.
Yeah, and I think in overall, like everything we've built is a little bit of an experiment at this point, and you see a lot of developers getting excited about Web3 social and the potential there, and a lot of the actual applications that are built today reflect existing social media applications, and we're starting to see more and more excitement to build unique experiences. And I think the fact that you can build something really quickly on a shared social network and leverage the existing user base and have direct monetization, those are really, really, really cool incentives for also builders to actually come and build these experiences. And to some extent, I also think that maybe in the future, the social media applications, they might not be the killer applications that will get all the users globally to use the application, but they can be even a bit more short-lived. So, for example, we might see applications that live for 6 to 12 months, but create this enormous, exciting experience, and these developers go to the next experience and take the learnings from previous one and kind of like a compound on that innovation and excitement that they were able to build.
That's really cool to think about. Any contribution you make can have this great meaning, even if it doesn't last for a long time. Digging in a bit more to Lens V2, so we talked about ownership and profiles and collects and sharing, which is all a part of Lens V1. But now we have smart posts and open actions. Can you describe a bit more how those work and how those are going to continue to proliferate this ability to monetize? And
smart posts are probably my favorite action, my favorite feature. We used to call them open actions because we were thinking that actually, with smart pods, what you can actually do is that you can integrate any on-chain protocol or even off-chain feature into the Lens protocol. And what it means is that we spend a lot of time on social, so we're giving a lot of attention to the feed. And with open actions and smart posts, what you can actually do is that you can create composable actions directly on the feed. And just giving a very simple example is that you might browse your feed, and there might be a smart post with an action to contribute to Gitcoin. And by the way, the next Gitcoin funding round is going out today. So if you're aware, and that's an example where you might actually fund most of your Gitcoin contributions directly on the feed, or it can be something like you might be buying a NFT ticket to an event in the future. So everything that lives on the on-chain, whether it's on the native network or even cross-chain, you can create a smart post action. And yeah, I think that's where you get also quite interesting impact opportunity, because that's where people are spending their time, and open actions can be effectively whatever the developer's creativity is.
You mentioned cross-chain, and now Lens has these cross-chain capabilities. Can you talk more about what that is and why it's important in this world to be cross-chain? Yeah,
I mean, in simplicity, there is a lot of communities that are trying to solve the scalability of the blockchain, and we have different communities now, which is great. So, and somehow layer 2s, for example, and other technologies allow to get more people into the space, and obviously more bandwidth for building decentralized applications, and being able to take social primitives across different networks is a huge benefit, because we have different communities that are actually interacting socially. So even when we're buying, for example, NFTs, or we're contributing to Gitcoin, or we're basically reducing, offsetting carbon emissions on chain, all those things are social behaviors because there's someone else doing the same, and there's social proof. So what we're trying to do is basically create on-chain primitives that we can bring to all these different networks where you can actually do this interesting behavior in a more social way. So that's one thing, obviously. And the second thing is that different community will have different kinds of use cases. For example, we saw a very interesting presentation from Marek from the CELO team. They're focusing quite a lot on the ultrasound green money. So you will see a lot of exciting impact initiatives coming from there, and we want to build and bring social primitives on that network as well. So that's why the composability is great, because we live in different communities, but there needs to be something that connects us all together.
Great, so you can interact with Lens on many chains now.
Yes, well, you can build open actions that are cross-chain, so effectively, yeah. And the next step is how we can actually enable profile creation, handle creation, and all the existing Lens primitives in the other networks that we have.
Yeah, that's, building a decentralized social network on a blockchain, which there are many blockchains to choose from, I imagine that can be a lot of work and technical challenges to overcome. Building on that, what are some of the challenges that exist in trying to build a decentralized social network?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we came from an approach where we were thinking that the social network has to be somewhere, and everyone has to come to that social network. So we're thinking that maybe it has to exist somewhere specifically, and users will have only one profile, and we believe in this idea of shared network and composability and portability. So you can you create your profile once, and with that profile you can go to all these existing applications, and you don't need to recreate the profile. Well, what we learn is that actually people want to have multiple profiles. So the portability is really, really great when it's beneficial for the users, and they kind of use it in the same way as you would use Google Sign or let's say Facebook login. But in what we've noticed over the past year is that people want to have multiple profiles. For example, you might have a profile where you curate music and follow, or create music, for example, and then you might have a profile where you connect with your friends. And even the younger generation, they want to have multiple profiles that are completely anonymous as well. So I think that was like a kind of like a bigger learning, and what it made sense for us is that probably it's totally fine that you have the exact same copy of the Lens network in multiple places. The same way, for example, we have Unisub protocol or Aave protocol as a copy of a software in multiple networks where there are users.
That makes a lot of sense. People want multiple profiles. You want your DGEM profile. You want your Shifi profile. You want your Maggie Love profile. And yeah, the younger generations are really going to be born online and exist in these various facets of themselves online.
And on-chain.
and on-chain, exactly. And, there's a lot of people on Lens today. Would you say most of them are Web3 native, or are you starting to see people from Web 2 coming on chain, like native to Web 2, haven't interacted with maybe the blockchain? And building on that, what do you think is the most compelling thing about Lens that would make somebody totally Web 2 native decide to start posting or building on Lens?
I think most of the Lens users definitely are native. And I think the reason for that is there's a lot of, when we build, and by we I mean like protocol builders, we come from like a very technical approach into what we're building. We have a lot of words that are hard to understand.
Yeah.
We know how to confuse people. Mainstream won't understand what we're saying. And obviously that's a problem. So people who are already on Lens, they are early adopters. Like we all, we have wallets, you might have some wallet already that you're using, MetaMask, family wallet, and you probably are connected to multiple decentralized applications. So that's a typical Lens user. Lens is still in beta, so it's going to be permissionless very soon. But I think what's kind of like missing is an experience that really is attractive for the more mainstream audience, and that experience could actually bring new audiences to Web3. But that requires also abstraction of the blockchain, so you don't have to learn a week or 2 days. I think the courses that Shifi has is amazing because like you can learn a lot, and actually everyone who starts at Aave at our company, they do the Shifi courses, and we hire a lot of people outside of the space because we believe that we need perspective and for adoption. But I also think that we have to abstract a lot of the blockchain stuff away and make it like super, super simple. And then obviously the experience, that's the hardest. So what could be an experience that actually gets people here? And that's, I think, if we make just easier to build these social applications on chain, abstract things away, it's going to be more easier for developers to focus on experiences. So I think the infrastructure itself will not bring new people, and it's a global blockchain problem. So we have to find new things that actually bring the audience. So hopefully someone will build that as well, and we're happy to help.
Yes, and something to note, while there are people at the Aave companies helping build the protocol, all those experiences, or most of the experiences, are built permissionlessly. So they're not hired by Aave. They're people who are excited about the Lens protocol, who are looking at this open social graph and figuring out how to build their specific Web3 social experience on top of it. Can you talk a bit more about your focus on the developer community and how many applications there are, or experiences there are today on Lens?
There are quite significant amount. I think there are experiences that are built over the weekend. There are businesses being built on Lens as well. So a lot of the kind of experiences that we see, they're focusing on micro communities. So they have familiar features, for example, micro blocking, but they're moving towards communities, and they're using Web3 elements there. So they have token-gated access to get into a community and talk to other people. It's very common I've seen so many applications and doing in a different kind of perspective. And also for us, the developer community is quite important, and we try to teach and also talk to developers in a way where we want to see big bets coming and also building and learning from their building and trying new experiences. And I think that's the way to get more people. And if anyone is building during the weekend on the hackathon, we'll be happy to connect and help out on your idea as well.
Yeah, there's so many things to discover in the Shi-Fi course on Lens. We just keep growing the slides with the amount of applications on Lens protocol. And I met a couple of builders here in Turkey, Turkish builders, which I thought was really cool that, we're building this technology and we're seeing other people all over the world build on top of it.
Yeah, and if you want to use already a Lens application, and you can use Orb. It's a nice mobile first application, Butterfly, and there's one application that is on desktop. It's called Hey, and that was built on a 2-week hackathon. That is an open source front end as well, so you can actually fork that application and build your own experience for your users. So we're constantly trying to find ways to save developer minutes and make people to build faster what they want.
And I believe I have time for about one more question. So I would love to know what advice you would give to the builders and the users in the audience of, how they can leverage Lens, especially the exciting new updates in Lens v2 to, build their Web3 social apps or build their Web3 social presence. I think
from more like a user perspective, it's interesting to actually build exciting communities. And I think DevConnect is an example of a week where there isn't really like a one big event, but you have these smaller events and group of people participating. So building those communities in a more Web3 social way is very fascinating, and finding ways to what binds people together. And for the builders itself, I think social is very hard to build. But what works really well, if you build fun experiences and something new, that's really hard. But really, it's worth it, because if you build a really exciting experience, you might actually be the person who is onboarding a lot of new people into the space, and providing a lot of choice for the users, because the idea of Web3 social and Lens is to give user choice, meaning they don't have to subscribe and be forced to use certain algorithms or applications. They have more choice, and that drives innovation. And users have more skin in the game, because the idea of Web3 for me is that we get more users that are caring about the future that we build. So that will be my biggest advice.
I love that advice. If you want to build something fun for the Shi-Fi community on Orb
that
this weekend, cool. Definitely let us know. And I feel like we could have had a much longer conversation on choosing your own algorithms and many of the other interesting problems we're able to solve with Web3 social by enabling so many experiences to exist, but sadly we're out of time. So for another conversation, thank you so much, Stani.
Thank you, Maggie. That's good.